Hi and welcome back to the channel for another one of our searches from the Cars from Wheeler Dealer. This time we are going to be looking for the 1996 E36 M3 convertible, and this was the last car featured in Series 6, and then we got the first car of Series 7, which was a 1973 Jensen Interceptor. So first up we have the 1996 BMW M3 convertible, and this program first aired on the 17th of November 2009. They might pick this car up for just £4,500, and this was because it had a few issues. Once they got it back to the workshop, Ed had to source a replacement gearbox because there were big problems with that. He also had to get Mike to source a new interior, which Mike did, but unfortunately got one with manual seats rather than electric, so poor old Ed had to swap the covers over from one to the other so they could retain the electrical side of it. And the other thing was they sent the alloy wheels to a man in the van to get refurbished just to smarten the looks up. So how did the numbers crunch on this one? Well, as I already mentioned, £4,500 was the purchase price, and they spent £1,080 on the repairs, a big chunk of that obviously being the gearbox. And when they came to sell it, they got £5,950. So that left them a profit of just £370. So a lot of work for not a lot of return on that particular one, but that's how it goes. If we fast forward to 2024 and the Practical Classics valuation guide, that gave me a little challenge because it doesn't actually give a separate listing for a convertible on the M3. So I've had to use the hardtop valuation, and that comes in at £14,000. So that would have given them an uplift of £8,050 compared to when they sold it back in 2009. So if you'd hung on to that car, it would have been a reasonable investment, I guess, and anything with an M badge, as we know, is always going skywards in price at the moment. So what happened to M300 SDB after the show? Well, I think most of you know I like to look at the MOT history to give myself sort of heartbeat for the car. And this one, the first one I think is applicable, is April 2009, where this is quite possibly when Wheeler Dealers were working on it. It had a fail on a few minors, but then sort of passed a few days later. It then returned for MOT in 2010, 2011, 2012, where it passed with a few advisories, but nothing spectacular. And by 2012, it'd done about 15,000 miles since the show. But strangely, there's nothing after that, which is never really a good sign. But if we have a look at DVLA, yeah, tax has run out in 2013, and the MOT we already know is gone, so not looking good again. But if we go over to My Car Check, if we have a look, we can see under export there's a big red highlight, and yes, this was exported on the 1st of September 2012. And usually, as we know, when they get exported, we lose track because they're different number plates, very difficult to find around the world. But not this time. And this one I managed to track down with the help of the M3 Cutters forum, and that's obviously dedicated to the BMW M3. And Gringog posted on there that he'd owned that car apparently twice, and the last time he'd actually sold it for export, and it had gone down to Southampton to be shipped away, and it was actually shipped to Singapore and then went on to Thailand. So that is where we believe that M3 is now. Obviously on a completely different plate, and probably its history has been completely forgotten, but hey, that's where it is. Before I move on, just a quick reminder, not all heroes wear capes. And yesterday I broke down in an MG Midget, which I've only just bought, and there's a video coming on it soon. And one of our wonderful subscribers stopped by, saw me sort of stuck on the side of a busy road, and helped me push the car uphill to a place of safety. He said it replaced his spinning class. I'm really sorry, I've forgotten your name, but thank you so much for doing that. That's really appreciated. So, on to Series 7, and this is where the format of the program did change a bit, because it went from being 2 half-hour programs to one one-hour program, which seems a fairly sensible change to me. And the first car they took on was a 1973 Jensen Interceptor Mark III, and this program first went out on the 4th of May 2010. Mike paid £5,000 for this car, which, if you know the value of Interceptors now, you'll think a bit of a bargain. Need a little bit of work, nothing too major. The floor pan on the passenger side needed replacing. The brake master cylinder needed replacing. Changed the steering rack, and they did a sort of bit of a feed and so on the leather just to make it look a bit nicer, and finally had the wheels polished. So how did the numbers do on this one? Well, as I said, Mike paid £5,000 for this one, and the costs on it were fairly small, just £430. And when they came to sell it, they got £6,500, which, God, I wish you could buy one of those for that nowadays. So that gave them a profit of £1,070. So let's fast forward to 2024. Grab our Practical Classics magazine valuation guide. Where does it put it now? That car they put at £35,000. So that's an uplift over what Mike sold it for £28,500. Not a bad return if you'd hung on to that car. They really have shot up, those Jensens. So the bit you're really interested in, what happened to WLY654M after it left the show? Well, let's do our usual initial checks. We'll have a look on DVLA. Still showing its tax. There's obviously historic tax now. It's now MOT exempt since 2018, so it wasn't compulsory to have an MOT, so that's fine. MOT wise, we go down that route. It had one in February 10, which could of course been the time that Wheeler Dealers were working on it. And then it had one in 2011, 2012, 2013. Nothing too major sort of wrong with it at those points. It skipped year 2015. It's still sort of fairly healthy at that point. And then it goes quiet until 2019, which is interesting because that's after it had become MOT exempt. It passed, but there are notes of serious corrosion in the sort of lower body and all round other areas as well. So it's looking at possibly being a bit tired by then, but it's still going. If we look at my car check, we can make sure it's not been exported, it's not been scrapped, so we know that car is definitely about. It's not just there and on paperwork. So what else can I find out? Well, we go back to somebody we haven't been to for a little while. We got back to Piston Heads, who have been a great source of information over these episodes. And back in July 2015, a user called Scorehill posted that he'd actually bought the car. And he'd been on the program, so he was a genuine buyer. And shook, Mike said, "Oh, out your hand," and he shook it. And he said he bought the car, having seen it on an advert on carandclassic.co.uk, and he went to view the car. He was actually shown around by Paul, and he put it up on the ramp, showed him everything they'd done to it, and also he haggled with Paul, and they agreed the price. When he'd seen the advert, it had said that that it was being done for a TV show and they might be required for filming, and he agreed to go back the following Friday, where they did the filming bit, and obviously it was a little bit sort of faked up because they'd already done the deal, but he was a genuine buyer. And he made also some really positive comments about Mike, Ed and Paul, so they're all really nice guys. Mike was really enthusiastic and knowledgeable, so some of the guys out there that aren't quite so positive about Mike and the crew, they really are, according to Scorehill, are really nice set of guys, which is great to hear. Interestingly, he did say they did actually do a lot more work than what was shown on the programme, because obviously the programme's only so long. They did actually replace both floor pans, drivers and passenger sides. They put new headlights on it, put a new alternator on it, and so it had a lot more work done than what was actually seen in the programme. And for him, obviously he was very pleased with it. Interestingly, 2015 is the last time under his ownership it was MOT'd. It gone quiet after that, and I then find the car on a Car and Classic auction, and this happened in 2020. And there's a long description to the car, and interestingly it said that the one who bought it from the show, which was Scorehill, he'd sold it in 2019 to somebody else, and interestingly just after he sold it was when that last MOT with all the corrosion was mentioned. But this owner had apparently always wanted a Jensen Interceptor and spent £18,000 on suspension, steering and brakes with a Jensen specialist called Regen. Sorry, I had to check that one. And he then decided it needed sort of work on the body side of it. So I think he decided at that point to sell it on, and that's why just over a few months later it appeared for sale on the Car and Classic as an auction, and that auction finished at 22,750. And those change of ownership dates all fit with what's on my car check, so we know that all fits together. So whoever bought that in February 2020, just before lockdown, remember, has got themselves something which sounds really sort of mechanically sound, but obviously needs quite a bit of work on the bodywork. So hopefully this car will reappear in the future. We know it's still owned by whoever bought it then, so hopefully someone's fixing the bodywork. Thank you so much for watching, and if you've enjoyed this, I really hope you'll give that subscribe button a click, and in the meantime, have a quick look at this video because we think you're really going to enjoy it.